As Christians who want to know more about God and who he is, we have a responsibility to study his creation.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. I'm back with Noah Sanders, and we are having such a fun discussion about homesteading and farming and God's creation. And if you missed our first two episodes, go back to Monday, listen to that one first, and then listen to yesterday's episode. And he is a wealth of knowledge and information. It's so much fun. I love talking to people like yourself who know something about something that I don't know anything about. And it's just so fascinating to me to learn about these things. And I do love God's creation. You know, I think of Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. And it's so amazing to think, like, just looking at creation. My girls make fun of me all the time because especially my oldest, she's so funny. We were somewhere the other day and we were walking by this plant outside, and it had these really beautiful flowers. I have no idea what they were called, but it looked like a wreath of little tiny flowers.
Yeah.
And inside of that was another wreath of little tiny flowers. And it was just so perfectly and intricately made. And I said, girls, come here, look at this. This is amazing. And Brooklyn goes, I know, Mom. How can anybody look at that and not believe in a creator? And I said, yes. She just knows, because I look at that and I go, how can anyone look at this amazing earth that we live on? How do they look at the plants and the flowers and the birds and the trees and the sky and the ocean and the land animals and the sea animals and all of the things that he's given to us? Really, it's all for his glory, but he allows us to enjoy all of it, right? And he's so gracious. He could have made everything to be the color gray, right? I mean, how boring would that have been? But he didn't. He created everything with such precise color and design and shape, and with the ability to do different things, and with the ability for the world to work together. And it's just amazing to me. And so I love what you do. I love your passion for farming and homesteading and taking care of God's earth. And that's what we should be doing. So we're going to keep talking about that. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. Try them out for free, ctcmath.com. They have a 100% money back guarantee if it does not work for your family. So you have nothing to lose, ctcmath.com. Well, Noah, have you seen the documentary? Because I was just thinking as we were talking about just how the earth works together, there's a documentary called The Biggest Little Farm. Have you seen that documentary?
Not yet. I have not seen it yet. I've had a lot of people tell me about it, so it's on our list. But because we're often out farming and homesteading all day long, sometimes when we have movie night, it's not we're looking for something a little different. So we still need to get to that one.
You maybe want something about like aliens or something, but not farming. Well, this documentary is absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite documentaries. If you guys haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. You can get it on Amazon and I don't know where else. I'm sure all sorts of other places, but it's so fantastic because the whole documentary, it's beautifully done. The filming is amazing. And it's all about how creation works together, from the dirt to the animals. Everything works together, literally like a dance. It's amazing. The sad thing about the documentary is that the people who made the documentary are not Christians. They're not believers. And so they're not into like earth worship. It doesn't go that far by any means. But as I've watched it, I'm like, oh, I just want them to look at it. And just like I look at that flower with the little beautiful flowers inside of it. And I just look, I mean, that's something so small. And I see, how in the world can people look at that and not believe in a creator? I don't know how anyone can live on a farm and make a whole documentary about a farm and how it works together and not believe in the creator, right? I mean, it makes me sad. It really blows my mind. But yeah, I recommend watching the movie and then pull God's creation into it.
Oh yeah. We tend to believe what we want to believe. And obviously, without Christ, like we are blind, and it's so interesting to see. There's another documentary called The Gardener on Amazon about a beautiful garden up in Canada this guy planted. But one of my favorite parts that I mentioned to people on that is there's this lady describing the experience of being in this garden. And she's like, there's just a different level when you're in this garden. It's like, she's like, I'm not a into God, or I don't believe anything like that. She said, but being there, it's almost like, and she said, I don't want to get all mystical, but it's like it makes me want to believe that there is a creator and that all of
Wow.
this couldn't have just happened by chance. She's like, of course, that's ridiculous, but that's what it makes me want to feel when I'm in this place with all this beauty surrounding me. So it's funny how even people that are like, that's nonsense. It's still that's what it makes me want to believe, is that
Yeah.
this is the handiwork of some amazing creator that made it all. And it is because, it is, you are without excuse when you see
Yeah.
God's creation, and nobody will be able to say, I didn't know
Yeah.
one day, when we go before him. But as
Right.
Christians who want to know more about God and who he is, I think we have a responsibility to study his creation.
Mhm.
And often the world is better at proclaiming the glory of God displayed in creation, like that documentary, than the church is, when we really should be the
Oh,
standard bearers of like saying, look at how awesome God's wisdom is in creation. Look how it
right.
displays his forgiveness and his abundance and his beauty and his diversity and his creativity and all that. But instead, we tend to kind of like leave that to other, basically to the enemy, which
Right.
unfortunately, you can appreciate all that and still have a life that wasn't worth living because it wasn't about the
Right.
Lord. And so we want to help bring that aspect as the church and be the ones
Yeah.
that claim that.
Right. I mean, can you imagine going to an art museum and you were the artist and you have made this incredible piece of art, this painting that's beautiful and it's intricate and it has so much detail to it and it's just beautiful and everyone stands in awe of this painting and you're standing off to the side and you're waiting for people to just be like, "Oh, we want to meet you. We want to shake your hand. We cannot believe that the creator of this painting is actually standing right here." And instead, all these people are like, "Oh man, this is so amazing." And they never ever give you a second look. And they know that, there was a creator, right? I mean, someone had to make it, but no one gives you the credit for it at all. I mean, maybe you're sitting there waiting to sign, copies of the print copies of your painting and nobody really cares. I mean, that would hurt my feelings, right?
Yeah. Or
And
if
we
you're a
do that with
creator of like
God,
tools, and you've made
right?
this amazing nail gun that pneumatically hammers nails, and instead you go
Yeah.
in and you see these people that are using it and they're complaining about your workmanship
Oh,
and your
yeah.
design, and you look at them and they're using the pneumatic nail gun to try to physically beat nails into a board, completely contrary to the way it was created, like designed to work.
Yeah.
And often that we do the same thing in creation as well. We fail to
Yeah.
really learn from and appreciate the amazing gift that the design is in creation, broken though it is. And then we end up spending the rest of the time trying to fix the problems that we created by ignoring the wisdom in the first place,
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, of the one who authored it and created it and all the things. So let's talk about this because at the end of the last episode, we were talking about some ways to get started with homesteading and farming. If you've never done this before, talk to us about the well-watered garden project that you have.
yeah. So in 2020, we started producing a resource called the Wellwater Garden Project, because we wanted to take what we had learned over the years and what we had experienced that showed us how simple it is to grow food if you just are a childlike observer of God's creation, and put that into a simple recipe that allows people to grow some of their own food, but brings in the worldview that helps us see why this is actually something God cares about, how we can reflect in this garden humility, humility, faithfulness, and unselfishness,
Mm,
so that it's an expression of the heart of Christ. And also, because there's so many people around the world that need to know how to grow food, it's really an unmeetable demand. And there's even a lot of people, in the U.S. here as well. So we said, well, what if we create something that's a simple training garden that's fairly small and easy to do, and build into the program the idea that we teach every person to be a teacher or a trainer. So we're training the trainer. So it's kind of like a multiplying discipleship kind of model, so that if people plant a well-watered garden, the vision is that they would pray that God would, bring along 2 people that they could then invest in to help them plant their own gardens. And because it's such a simple approach, it's like a lasagna recipe. You don't have to go to culinary school to cook lasagna. You just need a good lasagna recipe from somebody that's, taken the time to tweak it.
sure.
You can easily equip somebody else on how to follow that lasagna recipe. So the Well Water Garden project is that it has that vision of 1 million well water gardens in 10 years through each person with a small garden, using it to teach a couple people a year on how to plant their own garden. And just understanding that it's not huge solutions that solve the world's problems. Just like we see in homeschooling, it's just investing in just your own kids, just a few people deeply, that ends up having the biggest impact long-term. And so it's the people that want to get started in something like that. If you go to the wellwatergardenproject.org, there's also a link through the redeemingthedirt.com. We have a free handbook here, and this one it has 12 lessons that go from the heart at the beginning, the problems that we're facing in agriculture, and goes into soil and how soil works, and how to prepare your garden, where we take those principles we learn, and then how to plant it, how to care for it, and then how to use your garden to teach other people. So it's a very simple system that doesn't teach you everything there is to know about farming, but it's a foundational kind of approach that helps you understand those basic principles that are really essential for succeeding no matter what your scale is. And so I really encourage people to check that out. And if they really want to get started with something simple, and even if you maybe have been doing it for a while, we have a lot of people that learn from us that have been doing lots of different methods. This has been helpful for them just to try in a small corner, of their existing garden or something, and see the benefits of it. Because the well water garden approach, we use no chemical fertilizers, it's all teaching, because the target audience really is eventually we want to equip the church to help the poor to feed themselves. So we want them to be able to do it without any resources, no purchased inputs as much as possible. And we've seen a lot of people now around the nation that are using this be able to have some really cool impacts in their communities.
Yeah, that's so cool. So really it's a community initiative that you're doing. And this would be great for homeschool families to do, even get a few homeschool families together, or maybe some of your neighbors together to do something like this. And I love that you're talking about just starting small. You don't have to know all the things. And again, I can't help but relate this back to homeschooling. We don't start homeschooling in kindergarten and have to know everything that we're going to do in high school, right? We basically need to know kindergarten. And then every year we step it up just a little bit more. And eventually we get to the high school years and we send off our kids to serve the Lord. And so homesteading is very much the same way. It sounds like you just start, we don't have to build a massive farm. Like we just start small, just one seed at a time, literally one seed at a time, and watering that seed and growing that seed and watching it grow before us. And there's so many lessons to be learned. Through
farming does
homesteading.
provide a lot of opportunities for education, just in the metaphors and all those things that it provides. But I think it is important in all this one of my mentor in Africa says the genius of God is in his simplicity. So the most effective things we often can do are the simplest things. Yeah. Because when we complicate it, then we miss what the essential building blocks are for success. And then we feel smart, but we're actually failing because we're
trying to be God.
Exactly. We're trying to be God. So the well water garden approach is a very, very simple approach, but it's based in the heart of Jesus and in expressing that heart, and having a very simple management system so it's duplicatable for other people. And we found that kids really do love it.
That's awesome. Well, we will obviously link that in the show notes. So let's take a break. We'll be right back. We want to thank all of our sponsors for making this show possible: BJU Press Homeschool, CTC Math, Apologia, and IEW. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. Visit the show notes for links to these great companies and thank them for supporting the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. We are back with Noah. And by the way, if you're watching this on video on our YouTube channel, did you notice my shirt? I am wearing my farm girl shirt. This is my cowgirl shirt. It's my plaid shirt. I love this shirt. I wear it usually in the fall and in the winter time. And so I'm wearing it just for you guys because this is our farming homestead. I had to be appropriate, right? I was like, I can't wear a fancy shirt when we're talking about dirt and homesteading. So I wore this just for you guys. So during the break, I went and grabbed this book from my bookshelf. We read this a couple years ago, and it's the Heroes of History. This is another Jeff and Janet Benj book, and this one is the George Washington Carver book, and it's so good. And so, Noah, you mentioned George Washington Carver. He's the Peanut Man, and oh man, this book is so fantastic. I love this series of books. I think I've only ever found one that I didn't like, and I don't even remember what that person's name was. But we've read many of them, and I love them all. So that's a great one because his faith, and like you talked about, he just prayed. Like there were so many times where he just was like, I'm just going to pray and the Lord is going to provide what I need, and not just provide what he needed, but provided the wisdom that he needed. I mean, it's incredible. I would say even more than resources, the Lord provided him with wisdom and the knowledge to be able to do what he needed to do. And so it's a fantastic read aloud if you guys are looking for a good one. So we'll link that in the show notes too. Noah, we have a few minutes left. And since we're talking to a homeschool audience, talk to us as homeschool families. What is some last encouragement that you can give to us?
Yeah, well, I would just say one of the things about homesteading is you've got to make sure that you, and this applies to anything, but with our kids, joy is such an important aspect, making sure that we are making things fun. God is a God that loves to delight us in things, and especially if we get the homesteading bug and we want to do everything and all that kind of stuff. I've known families that have burned their kids out on homesteading and gardening. And, anything like that that's worth doing is hard, but you've got to have a bigger picture in doing that. And I have a lot of things that I love about farming that enables me to disciple my kids, where it's the multi-generational, ability for my, the grandkid to work alongside the grandfather. There's real world consequences to not doing your chores. Animals die, rather than just like if your bed isn't made, nobody dies, right?
Right.
There's so many spiritual metaphors. I mean, it's easy to talk about marriage and intimacy when you've been around animals all your life. It's just normal stuff. But the biggest thing that I feel like has been really nice is because, and that I would encourage anybody that's in this space, and that is one of the reasons we've built this into the Wellwater Garden Handbook. The Wellwater Garden Handbook is, and that is the idea of having a mission of serving others. What you do, oftentimes we can say, well, my mission field is my family. Yes. But to disciple our family well, we've got to be also, like, our kids need to be part of serving others, not just like us serving them, and then someday when they're gone, we'll serve somebody outside of our family, but through hospitality, through, like where we have a missional mindset of impact.
Yes.
When that's what our farming is about. And the Wellwater Garden Handbook, that title, Wellwater Garden, comes from Isaiah 58, where it talks about we want God to heal our land. Like, we really need to go back to having a heart for the last, the least, and the lost, and making a plan for the poor. And so when we garden, and we're learning that ourselves, but we're also trying to pray that God would bring along people that could benefit from this, and then we train them, even if it's just showing them our garden or whatever, when we can build in like doing things and then using that as a way to bless other people, all of a sudden it's a whole nother level, of experience and teamwork and understanding who God is, and seeing, lost people and engaging in the messiness of that in a way that is going to be some of the biggest impact that they take away from that, and why they value gardening at the end of the day. If it's just about because I think it's cool, or just about, oh, it's cheaper, or anything like that, it's not going to, like, at the end of the day, they're going to be like, why am I doing this again? I don't want to do this when I grow up. But if they see lives changed, both themselves and what God's teaching them, and then their ability to serve others through that, that's, even if they don't garden growing up, if that's what you're teaching them through it, it's going to be a really powerful tool for God to use to equip your kids for whatever they have. But I'd really encourage you to maintain that joy, and really base it in the joy of serving God and serving others through, whether it's your homesteading, your homeschooling, or anything that God's called you to in particular.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I have loved this conversation. This has been so much fun. Noah, thank you so much for joining us this week. Tell us one more time where everyone can find everything that you talked about. And I think you mentioned that the Well-Watered Garden Project Handbook is free of charge. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a free download at wellwatergardenproject.org. And if you go to redeemingthedirt.com, there's a link to our podcast shows,
Okay.
to our online academy, which is it's got an entire it's got courses on there and all this stuff, and it's also
Awesome.
free. And then there's a link to the Wellwater Garden Project, and you can see some videos of churches that have used it, where it's even allowed them to reach out and bring people to the Lord and all sorts of cool stuff.
Wow.
If you go to redeemingthedirt.com, you should be able to find most of that, as well as our upcoming training dates, where people come to our farm for 5 days
Okay.
and we train them through our curriculum, and they live with our family for that period of time. And that's some of our most impactful things, because that's what produces our network of trainers now that we focus most of our time investing in around the U.S. and the world,
Yeah.
who are teaching and serving into, the needs in different communities.
Yeah, that's great. Is there a place on your website where people can support you financially?
Yeah, there is also a support or donate button is there as well, because it helps us to be able to make some of these things free of charge to people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you guys feel led, go to his website, check out the freebies, but also pray about whether or not you would be led to support his ministry. I think it's incredible what you're doing, Noah. Thank you so much for joining us. And you guys, thank you for listening. I hope you have been encouraged this week. I know that I have been. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you back here on Monday. Stay tuned to the very end to hear a clip of what we've got coming then. Bye.
A mom said to me one time, "Aren't you worried about sheltering your children?" And I said to her, "We care more about sheltering tomato plants in the culture right now than we do about our precious children." And so if someone wants to accuse me of sheltering my children, my answer is always absolutely yes. I will shelter my child until I know my child can stand up against the elements of the culture, so that they can grow to maturity, and we slowly begin to remove the shelter from around them as we see that they are mature and that they understand the battle lines around them and can engage the culture from a position of strength rather than weakness.
I realized that I knew that the beliefs were incorrect about the Christian theology, but I couldn't form a cogent, succinct response in order to counter that. I just said, well, this isn't true. And so I started to explore how to form that response. And that was the start of learning what is apologia, what is Christian apologetics. At the very base of each of us is a worldview, whether we acknowledge it or not. And so that worldview thereby sets the stage for what do we do in life? What do we believe is right or wrong? I don't want our children to wait until they're 30 to learn the word apologetics.
Right.
I don't want them to wait until they're adults to then start studying the evidence. Let's encourage them when they're young to understand the evidence and to be prepared to live out their faith. The most important thing you can do is to first be aware it's our responsibility to be intentionally persistent. And then we talked about, as we prayed before this episode, Philippians 4:13, I can do all through Christ who strengthens me, because it's going to be exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got those first 18 years to help anchor your youth, because the culture's coming for them.